published by Ibbotson Street Press in 2020, and Slow as a Poem, also published by Ibbotson Street Press in 2002. Her work also appears in several anthologies and magazines. She was a panelist at the Massachusetts and New Hampshire Poetry Festivals in 2017. Linda is treasurer and member, coordinator of the New England Poetry Club, and Seldom Purely is available at Lulu, Barnes & Nobles, and Amazon. So welcome, Linda.
Thank you, Carmelite. I'm so excited. So many people came. This is great. Thank you so much for being here. I'm excited to be reading for the first time, almost, from my new book. I did have an interview with Doug Holder on Somerville Community Access TV, but this is really my first reading, and it came out quite a few months ago, but you know, things in COVID, not much happening. So I'm going to start with a Cape Cod poem because this warm weather is making me long for the beach. This poem will appear in an anthology called From the Farther Shore by Bass River Press pretty soon. It's called Harding's Beach. We'll go to the Cape today and walk again to the lighthouse. Almost nothing's there but the trail and sky and glimpses of the sea. Parts of the trail are rough and pebbly, and parts let your feet sink into drifts like powdery snow. Hardy scrub may be blooming along the way, dusty miller, rose hips, and purple vetch. Some grand cottages on the rise beyond the creek will stare at us in their leisure as we work out our worries on the trail. We'll make it all the way to the lighthouse, where Chatham Road's channel meets Stage Harbor, and watch sailboats and fishing vessels come and go. We'll return by the breezier Nantucket Sound if it's sunny and getting hot. We'll come home feeling well used and in possession of a plan, even if it's only dinner in town. We've sloughed off the old skin of our feet so many times on the trail, it will know us when we return. This next poem is dedicated to my sister Barbara, who is here today because she's in it. And this is when we were very young. 60s snapshot. Barbara drove the blonde bomber, a big tan station wagon she captained boldly with her ultra blonde hair blowing in the breeze. Yellow Submarine blared on the radio, and friend Candy in the front seat sang too. Little sisters Kathy and I bounced along in back. Mom paid Barbara for babysitting and to take us for burgers and shakes at the castle, where the jukebox played some of the latest rock along with the country tunes. Back in the car, we headed for a swimming hole where there were boys with beers and talking about getting drafted. They'd launch off a steep bank on the rope swing, hollering and hooting as they released and flew. We were brave enough to take a turn, making us feel less outsiders in this teenage crowd. Bombing along the back roads for home, Kathy and I, the future lawyer and poet, trying not to be car sick, jouncing past the cows and cornfields, sang, "You got me rocking and a rolling, Barbara Ann." And that's what my father always used to call my sister, Barbara Ann. That was usually not a good sign, I think, when he said that. But anyway, there's something of a theme in this book of things not managing perfection despite our best efforts, and sometimes coming rather close in spite of us. So this poem reflects that theme a bit. It's called The Perfectionist's Lament. Even in the fleeting moment when all the guests have gathered and the flowers are perfectly arranged, the champagne chilled, shouldn't someone have said something? Should there have been a song and special dance, even if we stumbled through them awkwardly? Wasn't there someone uninvited sitting home wondering, what the hell is the matter with me? On the radio this morning, a report on the discovery of a pentimento under a painting from Picasso's Blue Period concludes that failure and genius can be found in the same frame. A century after the fact, a modern scan reveals a thoughtful man peering from the canvas, overpainted with a scene of a woman bathing. She is the one who has been admired in a museum for decades. There's nothing so perfect that it has no critic. By the way, little public service announcement. As a bonus for having attended this reading, I'd like to offer a discount on the book to you. You could order through Lulu or Barnes & Noble or Amazon, but if you hit contact on my website, I'll arrange to send you a signed copy for $3 off the cover price. Now for more poetry. I don't know if you've ever had a visit from an animal where you felt a strong presence of spirit somehow, but that's what happened with me and this moth. The moth. It entered as soon as I opened the screen door and fluttered in behind my bed and rested on the wall there, more restful than I. It was a small white visitor to our family cottage with a head shaped like a Robin Hood cap. The next night, it was there on the ceiling, turning brown. It was the spirit of my mother, watching while my daughter tried the old face powders, still in the drawer, still smelling sweet, and none of us willing to toss them. Celia tipped one cheekbone to the mirror, then the other, the way her grandmother would when putting on my face for cocktails or checking a hat for the symphony. Later, the moth watched from the bureau, where I'd sniffed from my grandmother's glass perfume bottles long ago. The next night, the moth joined us for bedtime reading in the children's room. Last night, it was by the sink when I went to brush my teeth for bed. It was a giant among the multitudes of lesser moths gathered by the nightlight. The jutting head, like one of Mom's crazy hats, and large dark eyes worried me a little, though it was now very still, its wings turning to powder. That poem appears in the latest Bagel Bards. So if you're, if you like the Bagel Bards, you should get that collection because it's a good one. I'm really thrilled also just now to be involved in two, count them, two visual arts projects involving my poems. The next poem I'm going to read is going to be made into a broadside by Michael Shapiro, who's here with us today. Wonderful broadside artist, and you can contact me if you'd like to get a broadside of this poem. He's rendered the poem with a sunset-like background with the outline of hands reaching out. Poem's called Holding On. I died and went to the amorphous place where we go, perhaps, I was permitted to see my hands for a while, but did not recognize them. They could have been anyone's hands, straining to read the map of their story, liver spots, uneven nails. I discerned a life full of holding on. Light pulled my gaze, but I turned from the glint of it, bouncing off things, windowsills, mirror lakes, high-rise buildings, to the diffuse light of wide open sky, where I was warmed and cupped by impossibly soft hands, also like mine, softly kneading. The other art project that's going on right now is Danielle Kritschmar, who got a Somerville Arts Council grant, is going to use a stanza from this next poem for an art installation in front of my house. She's going to do some in other houses in Somerville as well. So this spring, I guess, maybe summer, you can start walking around and reading some poetry and seeing her artwork with it. I chose this because, you know, we need to spread happy feelings, and hopefully it does. It's called Best Wishes. Sometimes something precious lies quite close to you, but you don't see it, or know its value, or know you want it. Someone leaves it for you or brings it as a gift, some friend, some God. My prayer for you is this, that you will be a gatherer in times of abundance, that you will be ascetic in times of scarcity, that you will find joy in much and little, and always be in harmony with what is. I wrote that when my kids were little, and I was like, oh my gosh, what they have to know that I wish them so much all the best. So that was kind of condensed in there, and now I realize I really wish it for the whole world. This last poem could wind up in a chapbook called What We Keep Someday. That was an original idea for Sell Them Purely, but anyway, it's called Sorting Things Out. On a hot day, I try to imagine life unencumbered in a Manhattan apartment sparsely furnished by somebody else. The wall sconces are plain and shoot their light up to nowhere. I try to sit on a little stick chair, and already I don't fit. Back in the frowsy chair I inhabit, I am surrounded by the salvage I cannot deny. Each piece with a story, found at a yard sale, came with the house. Grandmother's reliquaries, painted vials, a heavy omelet of kismet and karma. Keep, toss, file, piano books from the Conte Music School of Jersey City include a lesson card in Grandfather Pasquale's own hand, marking the page of a scherzino Uncle Louis was to play vivace. But all this lingering makes my own pace retardando, plucking the strings of remembrance. Which of what I leave will be cherished? A photo album, the blue Paris dress, the Balinese frog in the fireplace, a small book of poems. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Linda. Next up, we have Timothy. He is the author of 16 books of fiction and poetry. His latest and Amazon #1 bestseller, Poems of 2020, is his 9th poetry. Timothy hosted the successful Dyer Literary Series in Cambridge, Massachusetts from 2001 to 2018 and has a virtual series starting in 2020. Timothy was the co-founder of the Somerville News Writers Festival. He has over 600 works of fiction and poetry published, of which 17 have been nominated for the Pushcart Prize. His work has also been nominated for a Massachusetts Book Award, the Best of the Web, the Small Fictions Anthology, and has read on National Public Radio. Please welcome Timothy.
Thank you, Warrior. And thank you to New England Poetry Club. And it's wonderful to be reading with Linda and Eleanor, who apparently brought all these people. I'm going to start with reading something from Spreading Like Wildflowers. At a cookout for poets. Outside, I invent haikus, fake free verses or laughter about what's on the grill and significant other things. Inside, I imagine my mother's kidney is like an old clove of garlic in the host's refrigerator. The tumor growing like its root, pretending to be polite here, not to be intrusive. I will ask God to take care of all that is rotten. I remember autumn 1967. I met my aunt during a year I had redacted. She planted kisses on me many years after the incident. I can smell her fragrant lipstick, felt her waxy smudges on my cheeks. She knew she had forced her way into my suffocation while the rest of the family laughed at the hugs and kisses for me, the vacant boy, squirming and flailing like someone coming out of anesthesia or licking an electric cord I swore would provide relief. I don't want to re-experience those flashes to darkness, but back in that moment I felt tiny and useless as the dust in a corner, while the big fat elephant in the room howled with the rest of them. They had silenced my screams years earlier, but no one knew why I grew up so visceral, imagining bashing all those faces, all those laughing lips bleeding. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 99, 100,000 times. You can't edit, but I can live with myself, a dead boy who's a man lucky to start breathing. Lucky I don't ever need to forget that. This is from 2020 Poems, and I am really overwhelmed by how well this book has done. And here's a poem I wrote with my mom while she was in hospice. Near leaves and light. Even the leaves were threatening, the orange ones especially. When she saw, she shivered, felt as if she could pluck the light from the branches. The noise deafening. Think about this. Think about this. Thoughts more important than words. In those thoughts, he is very near. Then there was singing. She died on a Christmas night, 2019, and here's a poem, Christmas 2019. Stunned awake by ringtone, and nothing good comes of that. Nurse asking if you'd like to say a final goodbye. Your mother is going to die in minutes, and maybe they're keeping her alive so you can get to Harbor House by midnight, because hospice shows respect to family the same way a second cousin will send you a sympathy card. So you tell the nurse no, because you have said goodbye every day for the past 2 months there at her bedside. When she whispered she wasn't scared of dying and what comes after, she says, you know, one time she could smell roses in the middle of winter. I'm going to read now exclusively from 2020 Poems. To a tree cut down, for BLM. You can no longer grow, your roots bore into pipe below a basic foundation under my neighbor's house. They watched each other branch out, streamlined, and then saw rope used to pull you down as if you were nothing, I will stand with the tree, protest going down, hope the structure can plume itself, become an element of change, not just leaved branches severed, raining down your splendor, becoming dank down to your trunk, your appendages exposed, cut up, taken away, forgotten. And this one is called June 10th, 2020 / June 10th, 2020. June 10th, 1960, June 10th, 2020. Life was simpler when gushed over a 58 Norman Rockwell. A policeman consumes today's special. A boy runs away. Thank God he likes pie. The cop's only corrupt for eating on the job. We've not moved much since another Rockwell and an incident in Arlington, Virginia lunch counter when a different portrait was painted. The runaway sitting was a diamond. Dion roughly taunted, spit at, cigarettes tossed at, shots fired outside. 60 years ago, exactly the picture unmoving. When we stand up in 2020, we're still sitting at the counter in 1960, only proving to be a metaphor in time, never serving a purpose, protesting the way things are, were, are. We are viewing huskers with Blu-ray specs, gaslight blasts that cause our weeping. Existential crisis. Hitting a snooze button, an archaic term like hanging up or alack, a lee, a low, a main, a nent, a non, freaking a Lord Gramercy, torturing the dog in order to trim his nails, buying and applying eye cream, writing vomit, describing cat shit to my wife, contributing nothing to anything. But what is it worth contributing to? The Salvation Army, maybe. I'm angry over the dangling preposition, like ringing a bell, having one's bell rung, causing alarm with ample confusion over mass confusion of causation. Certes, clep, eft, egads, ee. How Lucia Joyce was treated. There are no structured steps. When a choreography is dismissed, the staged mind is darkened. Reject the limitation, movements derived from interpretation of feelings. Rhymes become more fitful, food thrown up. Heaved a chair at Nora on her father's 50th. Fires were set after Ulysses. Cut phone cords, disconnect congratulations. Young felt she severed from reality, while James had anosognosia rubbed in the ancestor's nose. Stated they dove into the ocean to gather improbable creatures, except James twirled to the surface, while Lucia spun all the way down, mouth open, giving in surrender to unwilling incarceration. James swam functionally as a genius, cement-shoed dance partner, all of his weight tied to Lucia. When you have this connection, it's like the kitchen is on fire when before you only smelled smoke. You will buy what you buy, food. When you buy, if it's what she wants, you will scrub the house clean if she were to drop in. No need to call when you didn't see her on Wednesday, as you've seen her the last 3 of those, like a pattern, a routine you had, like laundry on the same night forever, always on Wednesday, the middle of the week. But the day you sat down and confided you had anxiety about all these changes, you said instead, the days are getting shorter, it's getting darker. You never liked losing those minutes of daylight. Spring always arrives, she answers, yet I still mourn like Whitman, his lilac blooming perennial and his drooping star in the west. I love that she knows that verse, and I love she is right. Your box of hot cinnamon sunset, and this poem is a found poem off the side of a tea tin. We sipped Harney and Sons tea by a fire, spooned unique and uncommon, like the box said, keep without light, moisture, scent, all tightly sealed. Remarkably assertive, the wolf-like flames leapt and snapped. Midwinter Aficionado. Raced to daybreak, my dear, crossing, bow jesting, surely our dice came up how I roll, snake eyes. So cold today, it is all faunas here. A chicken fowls out the bile of connubial. The times you pecked, the times you saw trees swaying, the woodpecker's sound never fail at the point of staccato. I'll credit the rocking chair with the percussion on that one. Ballet of Surrender. Dancing to get up, high on my toes, now point to each other, hypothetical anonymity. High on my toes, no one is looking, hypothetical anonymity. I kiss the ground I once fell on. No one was looking, now point to each other, no longer presumed difficult. Dancing, I am up, I kiss the ground I once fell on, no longer presumed punished. Pirouetting won't turn to bellicose feelings of uselessness, self-pitying. I no longer presumed punished. I never felt I could be a ballerina. Feelings of uselessness, self-pity turned to rejoicing in these basements. I never felt I could be a ballerino. Pirouetting can't turn to bellicose. Go rejoice in these basements. I kiss the ground I fell on. Walking on Mount Greylock before sunrise. Yellow, orange, red streaked words kiss our mouths, have stars. The cold mountains tell us cope, look up, crisp skies. Early breath evident, lips tonight became entangled. Seriatim composing discourse of shadowed trees, still are the evergreens. What you should do when attacked by bees. Run. People make mistakes, standing, swatting, giving extra time for the colony to recruit. When confronted by stinging bees, run. Through shrubs or brush, distract them, run until they are left behind. Some chase for half a mile. Don't be fooled into water, a poor shelter every time. You come up, they cover you, sting faces and noses, no way to breathe. Remember, run. Bees aren't being mean in a human sense. They just take exception. Rosebud Winter. Like snowfalls on the Sangre de Cristo, our confetti twirls in a tube. The sprinkle erupts, builds blankets of white on frosting over emerald. Never less green, not everlasting than springtime's coming. When her flowers are tricked, buried too soon, they will now wait for water to trickle down from her peak. I've got two more. Perhaps I can say 1.1 more because this one is so short. This one's from Chief J. Strongbow is Real. There's a fly in my soup. Waitress pulls a winged insect out from wonton soup, sifts it between pinching fingers, working as a grinder, producing blackened ash, says, not fly, seasoning. I will close with the poem from 2020, which closes the book, Ocean Hotel. Outside a window, the ocean laps over rocks, laps over rocks, laps over rocks. The foam is in the mixer. A quick plop resonates, followed by fierce, violent smacks over the sounds, almost staged, unmoved, a witness to this. Actually, I messed up that. I forgot an entire line here. So this is short, so I'll start it again. My apologies. Outside a window, the ocean laps over rocks, laps over rocks, laps over rocks. The foam is in the mixer, a quick plop resonates, followed by fierce, violent smacks into rock wall where a seagull sits, over the sounds almost staged, unmoved a witness to this. The sun opens early today, 6 a.m. when my eyes do not catch much, eyelids inching up like the water rising outside a window. The ocean laps over rocks, laps over rocks, laps over rocks. Thank you very much for inviting me. I appreciate it, and thanks for being here.
All right, thank you so much, Timothy. Next up, we have Eleanor. Eleanor Kedney is the author of the full-length collection Between the Earth and Sky by C&R Press in 2020, and the chapbook The Offering, Liquid Light Press 2016. Between the Earth and Sky is a 2020 Best Book Award Finalist in Poetry by the American Book Festival. Her work has appeared in Miramar Poetry Journal, New Ohio Review, under Warm Green Linden, Sliver of Stone, and other journals and anthologies. Her poem Bubbles Through a Wand won the 2019 riverSedge Poetry Prize by the University of Texas Rio Grande Valley. A Park Bench in Prague was nominated for a Pushcart Prize by Fjords Review. Kedney is the founder of the Tucson branch of the New York-based Writers Studio and served as director for 10 years. She lives in Stonington, Connecticut, and Tucson, Arizona. Thank you and welcome, Eleanor.
Thank you for the introduction. And I would like to thank the New England Poetry Club and also Linda and Timothy. Wow, what strong writing. I'm grateful to read with you. And thank you to everybody who showed up today. I appreciate everybody being here. The book Between the Earth and Sky is about addiction, and it's dedicated to my brother, Peter. And there are many poems in here about love, about rejuvenation, about a broader view of life. And in the end, this narrator, who is the sole survivor of this family, does choose life. One of the things that helped me go deeper into the poems and write them is knowing that something could be true in one moment and not true in the next. It enabled me a lot of freedom to really examine addiction and go deeper into the emotions. So one of the things that I'm going to do is I've chosen some poems to read today that will actually share a little bit how I entered the poems, or how poems that were hard to write for many years suddenly became available to me emotionally. So the first one I'm going to read is the prologue poem. It's called Harmonica. And I made it the prologue poem because throughout the book, there are moments of isolation, and you get to feel that along with music and the containment of addiction in the opening poem. When it was clear my brother wouldn't kick his drug addiction and return to all the things he was great at, baseball, tennis, downhill skiing, he still played the harmonica. Once at a summer wedding, in the lull between the toasts and dessert, he took the band's mic, tossed his curly hair to one side, and put the blues harp deep in his mouth, puckered lips, locked tongue, the bending sound like a train going through a tunnel. My mother stood and clapped. "That's Peter," she kept saying. "That's Peter." His eyes closed to everyone in the room, not fade away, took all his breath to play. The next poem I'm going to read is called The Study of Rivers. There's 7 river poems in the book, and they really helped me go deeper into either the narrator's feelings about addiction or what the narrator was dealing with, or to actually look at addiction from different perspectives. And what I found that I could really hang the framework on is the ability to take personal material and use natural phenomena so that I could create a narrative thread. Really helped me sometimes get in the poem and get out of the poem. So I had some emotional distance. And in this particular poem, you know, I risk saying something taboo. The study of rivers. Between stones, a rill where water slows. Beyond, turbulence. My hatred for a brother was a receded wave. To say it existed would be treason. The relief I felt when he died, perfectly normal, I'm told. He stole more from me than watch, ring, gold chain, a rambling laugh, a whirling dance, the movement of sediment complex, stream power, shear stress, water depth, particulate size. A river flows toward another body of water, sometimes never reaches one, ends its course in the ground. I chose to read another river poem, but I'd like to share a little story. I had gotten really tired of working on this material. I mean, it was many years, and I one day said, you know what, I'm taking a break. I'm not going to write about this anymore. And I left the house and I went to a local used bookstore, and I decided that I was going to go in and look at art books, and I would choose Monet's Lilies. So I went in, and all the art books were up high, and the art books were big and heavy, and someone came with a ladder to help me get one down. And he said, which Monet book do you want? And I said, any Monet book. I don't care. Just, you know, I just want to look at artwork. And so they gave it to me, and they have chairs there, and I sat down and I opened the book, and there was a card in it, and it said sis on it in a handwriting very similar to my brother's. And in it was a birthday card from a brother to a sister, and it was an apology. I closed the book and I took the card and I walked out of the store. I could never write the poem about what receiving that card meant, but I was able to get it into one of the river poems, and it's called River Waves. At Issar, water constricts over rock and creates a standing wave. To surf is to travel fast while not moving. I face upstream to catch the ellipse between a risen body and sky. Would it be easier if my brother on methadone wrote in a card, "Dear sis, I was difficult to live by," or he passed the soup spoon and talked across the table? The longest ride on the 7 bore is 7.6 miles. The flood tide surge shifts the crest against motion, disturbed water, the depth stalled in forgiveness. I'm not going to read the title poem to the book, but the line between the earth, the title came between the earth and sky from a line in the poem called Methadone Clinics Are Unmarked Gray Buildings Between the Earth and Sky. The next poem is called Postcards. I'll take a sip of water. And there's 2 things in my life that I could never put together. I could never truly understand. You know, my dad was in the Navy for 30 years and away at sea 6 months at a time. And I would receive these beautiful letters and postcards saying, you know, Daddy misses you. I can't wait to see you. And then, though, on the day that his ship would dock, he wouldn't come home for 3 days. He'd be out drinking with sailors. And, but then when he did come home, it was this great joyful moment. And I couldn't my whole life until recently reconcile that. And it came from something that was said, and that's in stanza number 4 in the poem. And sometimes it takes something to unlock the truth, and then you're able to write the poem. So this is called Postcards. A gull and I are the only two on the beach, feet planted on the breakwater. The gull looks left, right, out to sea, and occasionally at me. I think about the postcards from Nice, Madrid, Tangiers. Dear, darling daughter, Daddy misses you. Daddy can't wait to see you. My father would walk in with drunk sailors after 3 days in port, a porcelain doll from Greece, a baseball mitt, a valentine for my mother. The numb quiet would turn into squeals and claps, the landlady bringing coffee cake and our neighbor Joe piling lobsters in the sink. Yesterday, I overheard a man on the train say to a woman, "Sometimes it's too hard to receive love." I remembered my father in his dress whites. I'd run to him, my arms a wreath around his neck, the familiar beer fresh on his breath. I'd learned that my father's job as a boy was to look out the window and let his mother know if his own father walked straight. His younger brother fell out of a tree and died in his arms. He joined the Navy at 17. When all the sailors were gone, he'd sit at our table with a glass of milk, an unlit viceroy. I'd beg my mother, take the candy heart. I love to use technical craft to get into poems. And this one I'm going to read is called After a Monsoon. It begins with a millipede. I have lots of them after the rain here in the desert, and ends with the millipede. And then I use anaphora, which is a repetition, like a litany, some of the oldest things that were used in poetry. And I use it in here to propel the poem forward. After a monsoon. I lift a desert millipede on a stick, watch it coil into a ring of armor. I've tried to grieve my brother for 20 years. I tried to write about running into an old friend of his, off drugs, a steady hand on a coffee cup. About a young man in New York City, well-dressed in a tweed coat, wavy brown hair, unconscious in a pharmacy doorway, my brother's face in his face, and I couldn't look away. About his first day home from prison in the shabby light of our parents' living room. My brother, as a boy, broke every toy he touched. The phone calls from his friends for years. I couldn't say he died from an overdose. I said he's pruning a tree. He's in California. I haven't heard from him. I put the stick in the dirt and the millipede uncurls. Vulnerable in the light, moves in a wave. Some legs never touch the ground. There's another poem, page 77, let's see. There's another poem that I'm not going to read called Deltas, but after my brother died, I had lunch with a good friend of his who also was addicted to heroin, but managed to get off of it and get married and have a child and a great career. And he, in the poem, he really is a stand-in for my brother. but after he shares with me how great his new life is, he said to me, there isn't a day I don't want the heroine. And it took me a while to understand that, but the bottom line for me was, I didn't really understand. You know, I looked at addiction from how it affected me, and to hear someone who now had this great life say that there isn't a day I don't want the heroine, I finally understood the struggle. You know, so that's was really important for me in healing many hurts. So the other thing that's throughout these poems is a lot of object poems. And I'm going to end with a poem called Tissues. And the object poems for me were like little stakes in the ground. I got messages to write about certain objects, and I would literally, the first one was to write about a jar with a lid. And I went, what? And I literally had to take a jar with a lid and stick it on the kitchen table for a month until the poem came, because I was listening, like, what was I supposed to say? Nothing obvious about it. But this one is called Tissues. And I want to end with a poem that has a little bit of a gift into it for all of us, and our moments of isolation that we've gone through over this time, and the fact that we're all coming together and sharing. It's called Tissues. One trails the other, scarf-like in the air. They move silently up to my face, tucked under a sleeve or shoved in a pocket. It's a mercy to find one when I need it. Even full, torn, blotted with lipstick, there's always a clean edge. You'd think it was a hard lot dealt them, snot and spit, crumpled and thrown in the trash. But oh, to be made from a tree, awake to its neighbor, the crown moves to let light reach its kin, and to become an offering one hands to another. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't realize I was on mute. Thank you so much for reading. If anyone has any questions, please ask them in the group chat, and the readers will be able to read them and answer your questions, or you can use your audio as well. Does anyone have any questions?
We were going to do questions.
Oh.
Yeah, we usually have, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Sure, we have time for some questions.
Or comments.
Mm-hmm.
I'll answer all of them right now. Oh, wait, there aren't any.
May I ask Eleanor, first of all, thank you, Eleanor, for telling me about this event. Hi, I miss you. So my question is, how are your poems being received by, say, families of addicts?
I feel really grateful that people are getting the book and saying, I know someone who needs this book. I have friends who are therapists who are recommending it to other therapists who deal or who have clients that have suffered with either a family member or themselves have been challenged by addiction. And I also want to say my own family who never really knew even the depth of what was going on in our family have just really embraced me. So it's been great. It really has. And people who've even been a little bit more remotely touched by addiction said, oh my God, this helped me so much because I knew my cousin, or we would feel this in our family. So I've gotten a lot of emails from people who've read the book. I miss you too.
Just a comment, I just wanted to say that I really admire the way you used the illusion of the river to kind of do a lot of exploration of grief in a way that didn't over sentimentalize or get too heavy about the explicit grief, but kind of telling it slant.
Thank you, Lindsay.
I wonder, Eleanor, if there are poems that you can only write in Tucson, or there are poems you can only write in Connecticut by the water. I'm wondering what two different landscapes do for your frame of mind, your spirit.
Yes, and that's a very, very good question, because it does affect me. There are poems throughout the book that do describe the desert, and I use the desert. There's one called Desert, Spiny Desert Lizard, which I'm able to talk about the death of my mother. Yet when I'm in Stonington, there's the ocean. So I started out with the seagull and being alone on the beach with a seagull, creating that moment to enter the poem. But also I like being in Stonington in the winter. It's really different to be in the house. And one of the poems for a second book that I'm writing came because of the winter scene and being isolated in the house. I was there alone, except to, walk into town for a meal. That landscape itself just really gave me the container to stay with grief a little longer. Whereas the desert, the contrast in the desert with the heat, with the type of cactus we have, and with some of the challenges with water, does play into some of the poems that I write. I hope that answers.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, thank you.
I wonder if Linda and Timothy could each speak to that landscape question. Maybe Linda first, and then Tim.
Sorry, I did miss the landscape question and I lost my chat, so I don't know. Was it in the chat?
Oh, how does landscape or setting affect what you're writing? Does it matter where you are?
What you can and cannot write too.
Okay, yeah.
I think oftentimes it's a springboard. Find myself in a landscape and realize that it elicits some memories or feelings that I didn't even know were there, just by sitting down and starting to write about it. And hopefully it works in the poem to make the mood what it should be.
I mean, I'm a very visual poet, so that helps me if I'm moving around, but I don't intentionally move around. For example, like if I'm searching for a mood, I'm not going to drive to the beach. It's just how life kind of strikes me, and a poem might come out of that. And being a visual poet too, what I can and cannot write as well. Like for example, if I go into my basement and see an old baseball bat, doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to write a baseball poem. It might be a poem about childhood, or it might be a poem about abandoning things in my basement, or just abandonment in general.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Something just quickly to add to that, there's sometimes I'm writing in the desert that I'm imagining I'm back east. And I've just started a poem a couple of days ago about walking in the woods and looking at ferns. And here I'm writing it from the desert. So, but part of that is, you know, being here because of COVID and not traveling back as much. But so I have to imagine I'm back there.
Thank you all.
I have a question for Timothy. I was interested in your poem about Lucia Joyce and you know, this literary family. And I wondered if you were a literature major, or did you come to such a heavy subject, you know, later in life, or do you write about many literary figures?
Well, do I write about, I've written about many, but that's generally not my focus. For Lucia Joyce, there was a biography that I read years ago, so I was always fascinated with that. And when I started that poem, I very much wanted to write about her, but I did research as I was writing the poem because I didn't know like the full involvement of the cast of characters or specific incidents that had happened, like when Ulysses was successful, like how she freaked out and, you know, basically broke the telephone. But, you know, those are things that were in the book that I don't remember. So I needed that reference to reframe the poem.
So it was a research project.
It became that, yeah. It's funny. Not all poems or stories or novels involve the research. I don't write poems the same way, and different poems are written in different ways. So this one I researched. You know, you don't want to mess up. You don't want to mess up an historical reference in anything you're writing, whether it's fiction, nonfiction, or poetry.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much for your question. So we have room for one more. I believe it's from Kristen that says, for Timothy, it says, with the tremendous response for your 2020 book, which poem seems to resonate the most with people?
Lord. Quick answer. I don't know, to be honest. I think what resonates the most is when I talk about, you know, my mother. And it's just a general, I think people have said that it captures the year, all aspects of the year through the eyes of a poet. You know, everything that you experience at home and outside of the home. And I don't know, I'd like to, you know, throw that question also out to Eleanor and Linda. Basically, what was it like writing in 2020, and did the year itself influence the writing?
Well, we did Poet in the House workshops here at New England Poetry Club, and that helped me get some writing in, and I don't think we would have done that otherwise, but all this Zooming is actually pretty convenient for writing workshops. So I did a little bit of writing in 2020, not a lot. I got to kick myself in the butt some more. How about you?
2020 hasn't affected my writing. Renovating a house has affected my writing. It has taken a lot of time and mornings away from me, but I'm in the middle, a little bit halfway through another book, and I'm really motivated to keep going with that writing. So having a project has been really good for me. I don't have as many mornings, so I'm writing maybe less. But I also have found that the Zooms have really been wonderful, able to hear writers that I might not have been able to attend their readings. And the literary community has been just wonderful to keep joining on a regular basis. So I try to attend different Zoom readings, as well as try to keep some schedule early in the morning to write. But I haven't really I write with a lot of quiet anyway, so I haven't felt like, oh my God, you know, I'm isolated more and it's affected my writing. I've been pretty focused.
And I mean, I also lucked out that I have a publisher that really believes in me. So I wrote nearly, I think every poem after the one I wrote with my mom was written in 2020, and I gave my publisher like the manuscript in October, and it came out in January 2021. So there's a real advantage to that, you know, having a publisher that believes in you and that can just put it out there, because, you know, in normal times or with normal publishers, you know, a book 2020 poems might come out in 2023, 2024, and then there's no frame of reference, you know.
True enough.
All right. I'd like to thank everyone again for attending, and for readers for answering the questions and being so attentive and great. So thank you guys so much for coming. Right now we are starting our open mic, but please stay in tune for next month for our next reading, which will be with Kelly Jumar, Ruth Smolin, and Ann Taylor. And now I'm moving it over to, and I'm moving over to the open mic, and thank you so much for attending.
Hillary's running the show.
All right. Hi, everybody. I'm just unmuting myself. I'm Hillary. And so we have 12 in our open mic. And just a reminder, the open mic is one poem, one page. And first up, we have Sally Cragen, and Sally will be followed by Daniel Moss. So welcome, Sally.
Thank you. Boy, those were wonderful poems. I've been taking notes throughout. Linda, Timothy, and Eleanor, I really appreciated it. So this is a poem from a work in progress that last month was called Clublandistan, based on the years I spent writing for the Boston Phoenix, the Globe, the Herald, Rolling Stone, the Village Voice, about rock and roll music. So it's called Art School Band. We only got together to design the album cover. We practiced in separate spaces and changed our name each week. We made all of our instruments out of stuff we stole. We only saw each other playing our friend's art show. We all played solos at once and stood atop our amps. Some of us took our clothes off. Some lit our hair on fire. We never knew how many would come, and we played for several days. And now that gig is a legend, and tapes go for $1,000. And everyone wishes they'd come to see our brilliant art school band. Thank you.
Thank you, Sally. Next up is Daniel Moss, and Daniel will be followed by Paul Smith.
Thank you, everyone, for this opportunity. It's wonderful to hear just so much great work and so much great commitment to elevating the quality of our lives with beautiful words and beautiful thoughts. So I'll try to contribute to that effort. The title is long. This is just the first page of a longer poem called Universal Trait. The poetry that I have missed with the loved ones of why I can be, who have made me, who I am, who can see more than me, more than what I can see from that designation of us. The peach auburn haze of our sun over water, the seawater, the brine, green, beleaguered, the sea monsters, the whales, the dolphins, the splay, and the beaten rhythm of your heart, a soldier's cadence, your breath, salt, the sand standing at its edges, the glass there between our toes, the reflection, evaporating the pain, and our images in the sea, roiling, cavorting, as if playthings of gods underwater. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Next up is Paul Smith, and Paul will be followed by Bob Carr.
Am I being heard now? On mute.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. All right. This is titled In Case You Want to Know, and it'll explain itself very soon. That before I die, I would like to play soulful compositions, play them on the clarinet. I would not play songs or etudes, whatever they are, but a series of notes that cannot be played by themselves. They must have other notes to accompany or accommodate them. I want to play not just music, but sounds that occupy and own the air. Can this be done? I have never played a musical instrument, ever. So why ask me? I can't even read a music sheet. Without a doubt, I don't even know what tab to press on a clarinet. Should I breathe in or out, slowly or at a fast pace? Tell me, please. I've been told that Leonard Bernstein played the clarinet as well as the piano, which raises the question, did so many women love him because he played instruments or composed beautiful music, or perhaps neither? Maybe they loved him because he was Leonard Bernstein, pure and simple. I wish I were like Bernstein. But why be like Leonard Bernstein? Why not be like other men? Why not be like the Duke of something who gave up his right to be king in order to marry the woman he loved? Does anyone know? Did he play an instrument? If so, most likely the piano. People like him usually do. And why? Obviously, because pianists usually play the solo parts. Trombonists, other reed people, drum bangers, or even violinists, who are the masters of soulful music. None of these are soloists. Well, not usually, but mostly. Thus, you have now heard my tale of woe. Show me where to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Next up is Bob Carr. Bob will be followed by Steve Honig.
Great, thank you, Hillary. So 3 years ago at AWP in Los Angeles, I sat on a park bench with Eleanor Kedney, and she read draft poems about her brother's addiction, and I read draft poems about the early years of the HIV pandemic. And this poem is from my book, The Unbuttoned Eye. 89 Tears. Too young, buddy, I volunteered in corner rooms of stainless IV stands, sipped tall drinks of water through a straw, pretending swallows were uninfected tears. What entered the eye was upside down, the cryptococcal droppings of birds. When it got too ugly, spackle of cinder block mint green, yellowed casings over fluorescent tubes, any sign to stare at. I left the exhales of great teachers in hallways of overcrowded zipper bags. They taught decline in fast forward. I knew too much and no one never carried flowers, though I noticed Robert's pale lilies, stems in cloudy water rolling on tray tables. I lost the names of mentors without trying. Scholarly, silent, ageless, regardless of their age. Folded pillowcases monogrammed, while lovers said goodbye, I stood alone in hallways. I was a bony shoulder, the damp man, too tender to be touched. I read messages on caked teeth, scraped candida letters from blank tongues. In my sleep, I heard the sound of zippers, tripped and stumbled over cast-off leather, hoped that someday there would be a little rip to let me through. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Next up is Steve Honig, and Steve will be followed by Kate Kearns.
So you may or may not remember this Thanksgiving past where it rained incredibly. We had planned a dinner outside so we could be spaced and safe and set up a tent. Didn't quite work out the way we hoped. In terms of whether 2020 affected writing, new out is this, which is my new book, which is called Obligatory COVID Chapbook, available from electronic vendors everywhere. And this is a poem about our Thanksgiving tent. The Israelite sat in a tent, hoping the desert wind would not blow it away. Looking up at the million burning stars, he wondered who he was and why he was alive, if the sea next day would swallow him up. And was that the distant plot of horses coming closer across the night? He thanked his God in fear of not doing so, and in fear he had been misled about the future. The knight stood in his tent beneath the peak as his groom unclasped his breast shield, struggling to keep it from falling to the rug below. He wondered if the battle next day would give him mortal wounds so that he would die alone below the million burning stars. He begged his God to stand by him, certain he would, but in the corner of his resolve lurked mortal fear. The Pueblo sat in his kiva, watching the smoke rise through the roof to obliterate the sight of the million burning stars, as he drank the fermented cactus juice in near catatonic dreams, and fretted of the scouts' report of Army regulars across the gulch, in numbers too large to scorn. He implored Earth, his mother, to protect him in her womb, glanced furtively at the Sipapu portal to the darkness, but did not sleep, lest he failed to hear the long guns at first dawn's light. The man sat beneath a sagging tent, staring at turkey bones and a dish of orange potatoes. Rain traveled gently along the seams, dripping occasionally onto dirty dishes sitting on the folding card table. Above, the million burning stars vainly glowed, denied entry by clouds of two descriptions. Silently, he thanked the powers that brought him through to this day, and then prayed vaguely for tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Next up is Kate Kearns, and Kate will be followed by Mid Walsh.
Hi, I'm Kate, and I'm up in Maine. This is called Whitehead Cliff, which is a very famous cliff way, maybe 70 feet up above sea level in Monhegan Island. Whitehead Cliff. Back turned to Monhegan, far from your country as you can sit. Waves beat the igneous shore to shards. Magma poured this land into light, and light drew it into pitch-sweet shelter. Far as far, all the way to the brightward rim, sharp, fresh salt rushes, wrecks, retreats. This body is larger than anything living, all voice, its din absolute, a racket so smashing even the hardy gulls fly low. Stone shingled into 1,000 small ravines persists the iron wind. Without soil, beach roses feast the edges, find nooks in which to root. You scraped for months to get here, sure, but here you are. The hardwoods, their arms, went to timber in your name. Woman, don't you look away. Face into the holler and be brave. Thanks.
Thank you, Kate. Next up is Mid Walsh, and Mid will be followed by Thomas DeFreitas.
This is a poem called Language of Ocean. The shine on petal stone exposed to air soon dulls and disappears. This silent shell, breath-chested, holds in every ridge or rib a ripple wave of sound arrested. This clamp case felt this broken bloom or shard of cumulus pausing here in tidal rill. Bright umbrellaed, dazzle card, people drift down, sifting through the beach's stars. And here in water sound, recursive castanets of their own blood, vain wishing. See in sharp horizon thread, tightrope of platinum to teeter on a moment. Breathe as swell of sea and undulate contentedly in seaweed's easy two-step.
Thank you, Mid. So next is Tom DeFreitas, and Tom will be followed by Ruth Smullen.
Hello all. I'm going to read a poem that is about 3 years old. It is called 6 in the Morning. 6 in the morning, February, coffee. I stand at the cold porch door and look out on the brooding sapphire of the foredawn sky, pregnant with deep blue light that pales and shines toward the horizon, where the tops of trees, like scriptures in an inscrutable alphabet, imprint themselves on the margin of the day. Stones in the neighboring graveyard begin to whiten and become distinct. Traffic percolates through nearby streets. Sparrows sing crisp matins in the chill. There is a gentle splendor in these hours before the sun blares and commuters rush, before St. Agnes bells ring Angelus. Yesterday marked the first day in a week I did not see your face or hear your voice. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Next up is Ruth Smullen, and Ruth will be followed by Mike Ball. Ruth, you need to unmute.
Sorry about that. Thank you. Water's Edge. Holding him aloft like a trophy for the grown-ups to see, she parades him through the house to the front porch, her littlest cousin, the world's fussiest one-year-old, who stops crying now as she gently bounces him, soothing him, her 11-year-old voice just loud enough for everyone to hear, her smile wide as her round face. She sits him down next to her on the glider, points out the dog sleeping in the yard, the boats in the small bay, their other cousins playing at the water's edge. Her body's changing. She has breasts, but still a child who cries sometimes when her cousins make fun of her. She has a friend her age now, a skinny girl who comes over to swim and eat lunch. Gawky and endearing in swimsuits and bare feet, they talk quietly, giggle a little as they meander across the grass toward the road, tiptoe on the broken clamshells that cover the driveway. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth. So next up is Mike Ball, and following Mike Ball, we have Joyce Wilson.
Hey, thank you. I would say first that this is a memory of my year living across the street from the Hells Angels clubhouse in New York City time ago. And I was known in my software development days as, oh, you're that manager who doesn't swear. But this one has 2 obscenities in it, so I can swear. All right. Big Vinny, what the fuck you doing here? That was no time for wit or guile. Big Vinny could not be moved by charm. The massive beer keg shaped Vinny was at my face, his beard to my soft skin. He had crossed the street from the clubhouse. The giant stood his ground, was the ground. Have no doubt that none of him jiggled. I went to high school with Isabel, I said. She says I can stay with her while I look for jobs in the city. Beat, beat, pause, beat. Then the Blackbeard spoke. His motto, when in doubt, knock 'em out. Instead, Vinny said, any friend of Izzy's is a friend of ours. Later that night, she told me mine was the only right answer to Vinny, or he would have broken my thin nose. Vinny had the build of a black bear, the broad jaw and an ogre's beard. Sleet or snow, he never wore a shirt, rather just his sleeveless denim vest, backed with club colors over his fur. Vinny? Yeah. I hear you killed 2 breed club members with a chain at a show in Cleveland. Silence. Then you got a couple months in jail. How did you get off with so little? Beat, 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 grin. We got good lawyers. He shared once he thought you were okay. He passed his bottle of sangria, produced a bulging baggie of many colors of pills, tablets, capsules, uppers, downers, mescaline. Raised right, I only pick up beauty. He poured a cascade of this and that onto his palm and into his mouth. He drank deep and said, "Mike, I just can't seem to get off anymore." No shit, Vinny. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. So we have our last two readers. We have Joyce Wilson, and Joyce will be followed by Ellie Bates. Joyce.
Thank you. It's snowing here, or it was snowing. I don't know if it's snowing there too. This is a poem about making jelly from Concord grapes. Our Concord grapes. The grapes announce the end of their season when they infuse the air with perfume from their ripening fruit, a pleasure that engulfs me when I walk out past the sunlit vines. In gratitude, I want to do my part to be included in the harvesting, the transformations that will come about with changes in the sunlight and the weather. The jelly that I make will keep the present sweet in bunches of the purple grapes, enough to fill the boiling pot and show that I can make something out of nothing. Change fruit to juice with sugar over heat till it expands in bubbly tides of pink, then settles down at last to do its work and thicken into jiggly gel magic. And even though whatever I create will be consumed one morning at breakfast to join the temporary of this world, I will not grieve the loss of my reward, for I'll be heading somewhere else to trim the branches, rake the leaves, all for these vines, that they might live another 100 years for my neighbors, the neighborhood, the land. And I'll be thinking of the seasons when my friend returns an empty jelly jar as I hang up the tools where they belong and ask about her plans for Thanksgiving. Thank you.
Thank you, Joyce. And our last poet for the open mic, Ellie Bates.
Thank you. What a wonderful afternoon. I think I might be channeling Linda Conte in my poem, but anyway, it has been selected to read in our Martha's Vineyard COVID monologues next Saturday. The poem is "What Will You Keep?" The Boston Globe photo of you holding up a sign, "Our provisional teachers 2/3 persons." There you are at a union rally to protest the pay inequities of new hires. The ski pass and passport photo when you landed in Trevigna, Italy, rode the gondola toward the Matterhorn, exited and skied down the Swiss Alps back to Italy. The only poem your son wrote, Trains, true to his love for toy and real ones, and the photograph of all of us on an engine at Edaville Railroad. That day, he also collected discarded light bulbs from the exhibits, a sign for his future career in lighting design. The words your daughter wrote about dance and how her first grade teacher honored students by lovingly honored her children and lovingly put them in a book. The little book began her literary journey. A note from a parent who saw how your child began to like reading and thanked you for the change. You think now maybe the boy was ready and you helped him find what mattered to him. The card from a Boston hospital mailroom with letters written in permanent marker, RTS, returned to sender. You saved it and remember it as a get well card, one sent every day for months, one of the cheerful floral greetings to twin sister Rose. This one arrived after she passed. The Valentine from your husband who thought these holidays were so commercial. You know, this card costs $4. That's a ripoff. Will he know the joy you have today is worth millions? Thank you.
I like your keepings, Ellie.
And I have a lot more to go through.
I do too.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you very much for this really wonderful afternoon. Thanks to the readers, thanks to the open mic readers as well. I just want to remind everyone we have Poet in the House on Thursday, March 18th with Kathy Desjardins at 7 p.m. And then the next New Poetry and Open Mic is on April 11th. With Kelly Dumar, Ruth Smullen, and Ann Taylor. So be sure to check out our website on April 1st. Our contests are opening up. They're open from April 1st to the end of May, and we look forward to your submissions. Again, all the details are on our website, and Carmelite is getting us up to speed on Instagram, and we also have Twitter and all that. So, so do keep in touch with us. Great to see you here, and take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thanks again.
Thanks for coming.